Welcome to Dealmaking with Laura DiFrancesco, the ultimate podcast for entrepreneurs and professionals eager to master the art of acquiring businesses. I'm Laura DiFrancesco, a seasoned M&A attorney and founder of Dean Street Law and a few other businesses. Join me as I demystify the complex world of mergers and acquisitions with in-depth insights and practical advice. Each episode is packed full of expertise, featuring discussions on the critical aspects of the acquisition process, from identifying potential opportunities to negotiating deals and successfully closing transactions. Whether you're a first-time buyer or a veteran investor, this podcast equips you with the tools and knowledge needed to navigate the mergers and acquisitions landscape with confidence. Welcome back to our latest episode of the Dealmaking with Laura DiFrancesco podcast. I am so excited to bring to you my guests, Alex and Bobby from Rejigg. We met a while ago, have done some business together. I'm excited to introduce you to them and for you to hear their background and story, as well as for you to learn more about Rejigg. So if you haven't heard our prior podcast episode where we did a fireside chat, we talked all about the legal aspects of deal making, you can check that out in our latest episode that we have on the channel. And then I'm excited to have this conversation really focusing on bringing you guys more awareness about Rejigg and Alex and Bobby and getting to hear their story. So would love for you guys to introduce yourself and tell us more about how Rejigg came to be.
Thanks, Laura. I guess I'll just start by saying, really appreciate the chance to share a little bit more about Rejigg with your audience. Obviously, and I think we'll maybe get more into this, but, we've been building our relationship and working more together. So excited to continue to find ways to work together. I guess I'll start. I'm Alex. I'm one of the co-founders of Rejigg. We started Rejigg about 2 years ago. Came from business school. So I was a student at HBS and interested in search and thinking about doing a search of my own when a group of us, many of us, including Bobby, who've worked together at a previous startup, kind of came together and started to get more interested in what it would look like to build a venture-backed business in the space that made searching more accessible and easy. And this is how we came to Rejigg. And so I'm sure we'll get into it more, but excited to be having this conversation. And thanks again for having us.
Likewise. Glad to have you. And Bobby?
Yeah, Bobby here, also on the founding team here at Rejigg. Background's a little bit different than Alex. I come from more traditional finance roles previously before joining Alex at a startup previous to this one, and then now at Rejigg. So in that previous life, worked a lot with companies rather than individuals who are looking to purchase small and medium-sized businesses. And so bring a little bit of a different perspective from that side. But here at Rejigg, head the growth effort, so work a lot on a daily basis with buyers on our platform, trying to solve problems for them and ultimately get them connected with owners who they might transact with.
Amazing. And so before we dive a little bit deeper into the background of Rejigg and how you built it, for anybody who's not familiar with the platform, can you give them a little bit of background information on what you all do?
Sure. Yeah. At a high level, we're a platform for businesses to be bought and sold. And so we are focused on bringing small business owners who are looking to meet with buyers onto our platform on one side. And we do that mostly via our own outreach. So we're contacting thousands of business owners a week at this point to talk to them about whether or not they're interested in selling their business. And then on the other side, we're interested in bringing, serious buyers who are motivated and looking to buy a company in the near term onto our platform. And our platform is just about creating introductions and conversations. I think our philosophy of search, I think there's a lot of ways to be successful in search, but a lot of our philosophy is around, creating these like initial introduction conversations directly between a buyer and seller and creating a volume of them. We think that a good process, to be an owner, you probably want to meet with 5 or 10 buyers at least, before you start thinking about LOI and purchase price. Same with it as a buyer, you probably want to, be meeting with many companies a week during your search. And we really built Rejigg to be an efficient facilitator of that process. I mean, again, I think there's many ways to buy and sell a company. There are brokers and there are buy-side agents and other things that you can use. But we really built Rejigg as the first of its kind platform, I think, to connect owners and buyers directly to one another and to kind of efficiently start a process in that way.
An easy way to maybe understand how our platform works is to draw a comparison to the residential real estate industry. So if you look at how residential real estate was bought and sold 30 or 40 years ago, it was very different than it is today, in that the market was far more opaque. you were looking at ads, classifieds versus online. Fees were much higher as a result of that. And then you had companies like Zillow and Redfin come into the market over the last 20 years and really revolutionize the space, increase the access to data, really democratize the marketplace, and with that bring fees down and hopefully friction costs of buying and selling down as well. And so that's really what we're trying to do in the marketplace for small and medium-sized businesses is increase transparency, make it easier for buyers and sellers to connect directly, and take out some of that friction in the transaction process.
Absolutely. And for anyone interested in learning more about Rejigg, exploring the platform and everything, we're going to have all of those links in the show notes so that you can explore it in greater detail. So what inspired you to build Rejigg, and what was the first iteration, and how did it grow to what it is today? 3 questions in one.
Yeah, maybe I'll start it and Bobby will fill in more details. But Barrett, who's our CEO, started out this journey with his mom, who is a small business owner. And kind of later in life, as she was looking to retire and Barrett was in his 30s, he was helping her think about selling her small business. And I think saw how difficult this process is on the sales side. Especially if you're a small business owner, committing to a broker, paying high retainer fees and a large percentage of what you've built over your life to someone who maybe you've never met before. And it can be an intimidating process. Meanwhile, I think on the buyer side, I learned more about ETA and, Laura, we've seen you at a lot of the conferences and kind of kept one foot in that world. We've seen an explosion of growth of people trying to get into the space and meet with owners and buy small businesses. And I think, there's a lot of demographic trends that support that, this is not just a few anecdotes, that there's kind of a lot of these baby boomers who are looking for a transition plan for their business. And there's a lot of buyers out there who are essentially, turning into a profession, spending, a year, 18 months, 2 years, calling small business owners, just trying to get on the phone with them. So, we saw this as a kind of opportunity. When we started, Bobby and I, would do things like, we were working with like one buyer to help them source, a specific set of companies and, basically doing like, we'd hear about what people's, buy boxes were and go try to deliver as many calls as we can into that box. And I think we found this was an interesting model, but not the most efficient in terms of, trying to build something that was going to, really improve the experience for both buyers and sellers. And so that's kind of how we came to thinking about the marketplace. And so maybe I'll let Bobby pick up the story there. But I think that at a high level, really for us, this came from a few kind of anecdotes and communities that we were observing, growing, and really thinking about like how would we build this from scratch if we wanted this to be like a more efficient and better way to do something very important, which is the end of a career for one person and the start of a career for another. And that's a tough, challenging process that we saw an opportunity to improve.
Yeah, I came to the business a little bit later on in that Alex, Barrett, and another one of the co-founders, Michael, had already really come up with the concept in a lot of ways, at least at a very basic level when I was introduced to Rejigg, but was really excited about it for all the reasons he said. The demographics on the sell side, a lot of soon-to-be retirees who are going to need to put in place some sort of transition plan. And at the same time, a lot of individuals who are looking to acquire businesses and even some private equity firms that are now moving down into that lower middle market space as they look for more yield and more opportunity. So all of those reasons are what really got me excited about what we're doing here. Like Alex said, the platform has evolved a lot over the last 2 years that we've been doing this. I think it's important to probably highlight the big 2 ways in which we are different and that than some of the other marketplaces that people may classify as our competitors. And I think the main 2 are, one, we're sourcing all of these leads ourselves. So there are a decent number of aggregator marketplaces out there, and we're a little bit different in that we're trying to control our own supply, build a relationship with the owner as well. And so all the listings that you see on Rejigg the vast majority of them are unique to our platform. And then secondly, we let buyers connect directly with the sellers. And so we're really trying to disintermediate that process and let folks connect. We actually don't even join the early conversations. They can message directly through the platform. They can schedule calls without Rejigg employee being a third party on that call. So we're really trying to increase the accessibility for folks on both sides of that marketplace and let them connect pretty easily.
Amazing. And I think they can also see a demo of the platform as well on your website. So if they're interested in taking a demo and everything, seeing the different technology, how did you build out the technology? Was it a list at first and then you built it out into a web app? I know that you have a lot of filtering and buy box tools and resources as well so that folks can really find the business that they're looking for. So how did you build out the technology components to it?
So I'll say, first of all, as a shameless plug, as Laura mentioned, anyone can create an account for free on our website and poke around and just understand if there are businesses that may be interesting to you. And you can even reach out to a few businesses without any upfront financial commitment to us. And happy to talk more about that. To answer your question, our starting point really has been how can we build like the best discovery platform for people to get into conversations. And so, we started the platform. To your point, it really was just a list, and people would indicate interest in talking to an owner, and that would kind of trigger a workflow on the back end for us to try to find time on everyone's calendar and create a meeting. And that worked quite well when we had 25 businesses, 25 buyers, and there were only so many connections that we would need to manage. Obviously, as that scaled, we needed I think kind of the first thrust of improvements that we did was really making that more of an automated process. So today, buyers and sellers message each other. Once they agree on a time, there's a button that will send a calendar invite out to everyone, and they can message each other 24 hours a day, even when our team is not around. And so that was kind of the first thrust. Well, what I'd say is like the journey product-wise that we're on now is taking things beyond discovery. So now, after your first call, you can have an NDA generated in the platform that you can send. The buyer can generate an NDA they can send to the owner to say, hey, I signed an NDA and I'd love to learn more about your business. About 20% of the owners are now using our platform as a data room as well. So they can upload documents that they can, choose to share with buyers and so forth. And you'll see more and more stuff here, as we get into LOIs, which you can now upload through the platform as we get into other things. And our philosophy is that, the core of what we're trying to do and where we think technology really helps and where there's like a lot of leverage from building a network and the network effects and the technology and so forth is around discovery and how can we search and filter and sort and reach out to people and so forth. But I think that you'll also see us build more of the tools for the later part of the transaction, just so that we really want to be the best place to get a deal done, not just to find the company, but to really see it all the way through. And some early shoots of that is our partnership with you to make sure that when folks on the platform need legal representation, that they have an excellent M&A lawyer ready to jump in. And so I think that you'll see more and more of that as we push deeper into the funnel. But really where we started was that discovery piece and making sure we nailed that. And we still spend a lot of our time focused on that question, but the searching and sorting and filtering and the alerts and all those things the best they can be, because that's really where I think why people come to Rejigg.
It's worth mentioning too that a lot of the platform in its entirety has been, as it's evolved, has been informed by user feedback. So as Alex mentioned, we started building the platform in a lot of ways for individual searchers in the ETA space. And so that helped inform a lot of our early pricing model. It informs the types of businesses that we reach out to on a daily basis. And it's also informed how we think about building out the rest of the marketplace, whether it be including NDAs on the platform, whether it be including Calendly integrations to make scheduling calls a little bit more seamless. A lot of those ideas have actually come directly from our users, which is great. And so I'm sure that's going to continue as we keep building further down the transaction timeline. That's where we've got a lot of good ideas from.
Yeah, it's so apparent how there's so much synchronicity between our ethos at Dean Street Law and your ethos at Rejigg. At Dean Street Law, we are constantly thinking about how we can better serve our client. How can we have educational resources to support them earlier on, or we're even working with them during our representation? How can we prepare them for different phases of the transaction timeline so that they feel that they are their best version of themselves coming to the transaction, and we're our best version of ourselves coming to the transaction. So the ethos and synchronicities are very evident. And I think it's also evident in the quality of folks on your platform, both from the buy side and sell side. I have to say, I'm extremely, extremely impressed with everyone we've worked on, buy side and sell side. Everybody's been very business minded, kind, respectful of one another, reasonable, happy to negotiate, want to get a deal done, want to move forward, no bad faith players. And it's really been a pleasure working with everybody who we've interacted with. That's been a result of our connection.
Yeah, likewise. And I think we've gotten a lot of positive feedback going the other way as well. And one of the things we've learned is that, candidly, we've learned a broker is not always necessary. And that's sort of part of our thesis here in terms of a buyer and seller transacting, but a very competent M&A attorney is. And so I think if you have the latter, you could kind of forego the former in some cases.
Absolutely. Unlock the power of in-house legal expertise at a fraction of the cost with Legal Foundations. Gain immediate access to a comprehensive legal crash course for business, a rich library of on-demand video legal support, and the opportunity to apply for group consulting with Laura DiFrancesco as your legal mentor. Whether you're starting up or scaling your business, Legal Foundations has everything you need instantly available. Join now and position your business for success. Visit lauradifrancesco.co/the-shop for more information. And diving deeper into this conversation about how you support buyers and sellers through your platform, would love to talk. First, we'll dive into the buy side of things, and then we're going to have our conversation steer towards the sell side of things. So the buyers and sellers alike listening to this episode can walk away with some tangible tips, how they can set themselves up for success, and what you've seen help buyers and sellers best position themselves for success in their transactions. So when a buyer is looking for a business to purchase, they're thinking, okay, I need to allocate a certain portion of my life to this venture. Have you seen any trends in what you've seen be most successful in terms of buyers' approach to sourcing transactions?
It's a great question. I think the best buyers take the opportunity that I think our platform affords them to differentiate themselves to some of our sellers. And what I really mean by that is they have the opportunity to craft their buyer profile, to write their pitch. And I think the buyers who have the most success on Rejigg are those who have been really thoughtful about what they're looking for in a potential deal, whether that's a partnership with an owner or keeping them on in a part-time role for a certain number of years, whether it's a certain industry or a certain geography. The buyers who really understand what they're looking for and also understand how they are going to prosecute a deal and ultimately get it done and can communicate that to the owner on the other side are the ones that have the most success. And that's probably not that surprising. I didn't say anything too revolutionary there, but I think being prepared, coming to these conversations with business owners can go a long way.
And do you have any tips for buyers that they could use in their search process to help them find the right business for them?
Yeah, I think just to, first to reiterate, with what Bobby said, which is making sure you understand going into the search, like this is the radius where I can commute and live or move to. And, this is the type of risk I want to take on. Do you want to do a personal guarantee with the SBA? Because really once, you get into conversation with the seller, things start moving quickly and it's good to kind of have all your ducks in a row. I think the number one thing that sellers want to see is a confidence that you can close a deal. Thinking through very carefully what exactly you have that's going to deliver that confidence to an owner is important. There are a lot of ways that the SMB market is like the real estate market, but there are some ways that it's unique. And one of the ways that it's unique is that the market is that owners sign a 3-month exclusivity period with a buyer to go under diligence. And so if you're talking to someone who is 70 years old and trying to retire, to get them to the point where they're ready to sign a document saying that I'm not going to meet with any other buyers for 3 months, you have to generate like a lot of confidence up to that point that this is likely going to lead to a closed transaction. Because it's a material amount of time to a 70-year-old to convince them to take their business off the market for 3 months. I think the kind of most important thing, a lot of owners are willing to take calls with buyers who are serious and 30 minutes, worst case, we'll move on. But to really drive the process deeper past the first call, you have to build that confidence to be, very solid. So I would think carefully about what is the size of transaction that I think I can close? What is the type of transaction I think I can close? Why do I think I can close that? And what are the ways I can prove that? Whether that's letters from investors or letters from SBA lenders or whatever it may be, that one actually creates the confidence of that, and two, like, creates the evidence that you could.
And look, at the end of the day, this is an extremely relationship-driven process, which is why we care so much about the buyer and talking directly with the seller. A buyer may find a business that checks every single box, is perfect for them, in the right geography, perfect size, everything else. At the end of the day, if they do not get along with the seller and can't work together collaboratively pre and post close, like, the deal's just not going to happen. That's just the reality of the situation. It's a little bit different than a residential real estate sale in that regard, right? Like, you need to be able to get along and work well with the seller. And so that shouldn't be lost in this conversation.
Absolutely. And that's a critical component of negotiations, being able to get the deal to closing. And then especially almost every deal requires some sort of transition period after closing to be able to transition the knowledge, systems, processes, much of which isn't documented. So especially having a positive relationship, not just throughout the negotiation process and the deal making process, but also post-closing as well. So let's set the stage. A buyer's on your platform, they've set up their buy box, they understand what they're looking for in a business, and they have a good idea of realistically what's going to be feasible for them, as well as what's logistically, lifestyle-wise going to work with them in their future. So once they've done that and they've identified a great seller on your platform, what are your recommendations for taking that next step? How should they reach out?
Yeah, so practically on our platform, again, kind of the way it works is, an owner can sort and filter and search, as you mentioned, and they see an opportunity they like, and there's a big green button that says message owner. And, this is your first chance to make a first impression. Typically, we recommend a few things be in that first message. One is a little bit about yourself. Second is a specific piece of information about why you're interested in that business. And the third is a suggestion of a time to chat. And so, again, to Bobby's last point, really, like, our philosophy is you need to have a relationship with the seller, and that needs to start right away. And so by, putting yourself forward to say, this is me, and the implication being, this is why I can close the deal, going back to my previous point, this is why I'm interested in your business specifically, it's close to where I live, it's in an industry I know something about, whatever that is. And then when are you free to chat? You join the first call. I don't think a ton of preparation is necessary for the first call. I think you should probably remember the owner's name and things like that. But what we're trying to build is creating a lot of these high quality conversations I don't think requires hours of preparation. Understanding what do you want to ask. And a few tips that we offer for the first call. I think it's good to ask questions, and it's even better to ask questions and be able to explain why you need to know the answer. So I think sometimes owners feel like they're put in a position where they've been given a laundry list of, like, okay, what exactly is your customer concentration and net dollar retention and whatever. And I think it's a much healthier dynamic if the buyer can say, okay, for this reason, like, I'm going to explain to you why, like, I need the EBITDA margin to be above 15%. Now let's work through, like, what exactly your EBITDA margin is. Or, hey, like, after my salary, I want to be able to fund growth. And so I need to know that the SDE is going to be above a certain level. And, like, can you help walk me through what the SDE is? And I think that's a healthier dynamic than just, kind of firing off a checklist of questions, or feeling like, you're filling out a form on the back end of exactly checking a bunch of boxes. So I think that's what we would recommend. And I think, there's just, this comes naturally to most of the people on our platform, but, being on time to the meeting and not rescheduling at the last minute, and things are, always usually, predictors of success when we look at what leads to deals.
And the process itself is pretty straightforward. So 90% of the time, that 30-minute call is the first step. Assuming that there's mutual interest thereafter, you can sign a non-disclosure agreement on the platform. The owner can start sharing diligence documents also directly through the platform. And from there, folks are off to the races. And every diligence process looks a little bit different. Laura, that's where you often come in. And that can include site visits, it can include asking for additional documentation, doing employee interviews, and stuff like that. Obviously, negotiating an LOI or submitting an offer comes somewhere in that time span as well before really formal diligence starts. But the process is pretty simple. It's find a business you like, you have that first call, and then from there, start really digging into the business.
Yeah, absolutely. And I couldn't agree more with you in terms of the advice of explaining as a buyer why certain information is needed. I know even personally myself, when I go to get a loan for something to purchase real estate or whatnot, you're asked so many questions, and due diligence can feel like a very invasive process, particularly if a seller does not have a lot of counterparties, whether it be vendors or customers or lenders asking these questions regularly. They can feel pretty invasive. So couldn't agree more. Great tip on how to really position yourself for success, gathering the information you need while also maintaining that balance and respect of the seller's position and need for confidentiality and privacy overall. So I think those are fantastic tips. And in terms of building that relationship and maintaining that momentum and getting a deal to LOI and to closing, do you have any other tips for how to build and maintain that relationship and momentum?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And I think it kind of touches on another piece of context here, right? Which is that the deals on our platform are unbrokered, as we've discussed. And sometimes there's like a kind of unsolvable debate in the lower middle market private equity search in all of these spaces about, is it better to do brokered searches or proprietary searches? And I think that there's pros and cons of both, and there's no right and wrong answer. On the proprietary side, I think that part of the kind of responsibility that falls to a searcher in a proprietary side often is that you may be the first person with transaction experience or with an eye toward transaction that the seller's ever talked to, right? And so I think one of the most important things early on, whether that's on the first call or a second call or something, is probably depends on the situation, is to really lay out the timeline and how this is going to go. I think that there are a lot of sellers who think that maybe that they can close on a business in 30 days. And, from first principles, there's no reason to believe that may not be the case. But, we know that the kind of laundry list of things that you need to be able to understand, that kind of parties you need to get around the table and the different diligence items are going to take longer than that. And so I think helping to explain this is how the process typically works, being very transparent about how you're going to value the business in the process is important. If the buyer has an idea of a multiple, even if that's a range of what we're going to get to, and you say, hey, look, we're going to need to dig into the numbers and understand what's a one-time expense and all kinds of things to get to your EBITDA, and then I'm going to pay you 5 times that number. Just kind of giving people the framework to understand if there are going to be things that come up, which I'm sure there will be later in the process, so that nobody feels like anything's being retraded. So I think that the two most important pieces there is that I just say, like, one, establish a shared understanding of what like the timeline looks like and the items contained in that. And two, establish a shared framework for pricing and valuation that will help everybody speak the same language about like why something may reduce the purchase price, why something may increase the purchase price, and kind of like helping get everyone understand, on the same page with those levers, I think, are the things that I would say set the stage for the success of the next, 3 or 4 months of that relationship.
And we've had to learn some of that the hard way. Just to give you a couple of examples, right? We had one owner who just struggled to understand the concept of exclusivity and that was market. And so when we explained to them that they wouldn't be able to talk to other buyers for 2 to 3 months, they didn't understand why that was important and why it was necessary for the buyer to start spending real diligence dollars and financially commit to doing diligence. So we had to walk them through that whole process. So we have run into issues like this. Another one is we had a different owner who, after signing an LOI, was not comfortable at all with employee interviews. And so that was another hurdle we had to get through. And I think a lot of those problems could addressed pre-LOI by having a buyer, or ourselves too in some instances, communicate to an owner what the expectations are, what the timeline looks like, so that there aren't any surprises down the road.
Absolutely. Whenever I'm representing sellers and we're going through the LOI, I specifically call out all of the due diligence items. Are you okay with documents? Are you okay with reaching out to vendors? Are you okay with customers, employees, etc.? I think it's really important when you're going through that LOI process that it is as true to the relationship and expectations of the party as possible. And to that point that you said, Alex, as well, having mechanisms for valuation, all fundamental, fantastic ways to mitigate risks of the deal falling apart in the future. And I say this so many times in prior episodes, but it's consistent. the LOI is the foundation of the entire transaction. And when you have a good LOI, you're creating an environment for success for the parties to move forward, because these things become very critical levers, influential on the transaction success as it progresses.
And I think the maybe softer piece of this is, I think, reminding owners that this is it's a team sport. For most buyers, especially for like someone who's, let's say a self-funded searcher, or for someone who's even an associate at a little middle market private equity firm trying to do a deal, right? Like the goal here is everybody wants to get to the close and shake the hand and wire the money. And I think it's not a bad thing for a self-funded searcher to say, look, I'm not taking a salary right now. I'm trying to buy a business. There's nothing I want more than to get this deal across the finish line. And I'm sure you do too. And so, this doesn't need to be an adversarial negotiation all the time. The goal really is, how do we work together to get what we all want, which is ultimately like, a successful closing dinner. Because, the failure case for most searches is not finding a company. Right? The failure case for most, PE roll-ups is not, finding enough targets. And so the goal really is, how do we close a deal, not how do we save 5% of the purchase price. And I think just, sometimes saying that out loud is helpful too, making sure everybody remembers what we're trying to do here.
Absolutely. At Dean Street Law, we are friendly negotiators, because I think that the relationship of the parties is one of the most important components of the deal's success in the future. And so we want to make sure that we're being fair. Our documents are well drafted, they're good, but they're not going to be things that are so egregious that then the other party feels like they have to climb a mountain to get the document back to a more even, fair space. I think that's very important mind space for both buyers and sellers to get to closing successfully. Thinking about buying a business? Unlock the secrets of successful acquisitions with Acquisition Insights, your legal roadmap for success. With over 81 modules of video lectures, written materials, guides, and checklists, we provide in-depth guidance to navigate every step of the process. From initial interest to closing the deal, get the expertise you need to make informed decisions. You can also access our battle-tested templates in the Acquisition Insights course and templates bundle, including letters of intent, pre-LOI and post-LOI due diligence request lists, material deal terms lists, and more. Visit lauradifrancesco.co/the-shop today and take the first step towards buying your dream business. So we've had a great conversation around supporting buyers in their transaction experience. Let's dive into supporting sellers in their transaction experience. So you're reaching out to sellers, having those conversations, getting them introduced into the process of selling their business. When you are bringing them onto the platform, do you have tips for them to what they should be thinking about before listing their property for sale?
Yeah, it's a great question. So our outreach process is obviously a little bit different. In a lot of instances, we're cold outreaching to a lot of these owners to see if they might be interested in selling their business. And our value proposition to an owner is, I think, a little bit unique in that we offer them an opportunity to connect with qualified buyers without charging them anything. We don't charge sellers anything to transact or to list on our platform. We get compensated on the buyer side. And so from a seller perspective, it's a great way, whether they're just starting their process to sell or whether they're had previously engaged a broker in the past and are incredibly motivated to get a deal done. Wherever they are on that spectrum, our platform lets them get connected without any cost to them. So I think that is a sort of a unique value proposition. I think a lot of these owners get reached out to by a lot of different folks. We're not the only ones who have cold called or cold emailed them in the past, but our platform lets them, again, stay a little bit more organized in terms of what buyers are talking to. It empowers them to be able to review buyer profiles ahead of time before accepting conversations. So that's sort of what we're trying to put in place for sellers. And I think it also opens up the door to some folks who might be earlier on in their process to start having those conversations with buyers without having to pay a huge fee to a broker as a retainer and sign up for some sort of long tail period.
Very helpful. And when they're going through that process of getting onto the platform, what key information do they need to start gathering of theirs?
Yeah, good question. When we normally on those, so when we get connected with an owner who is interested in selling, we have an onboarding call with them, and that could last anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour. And during that call, we collect a lot of high-level information that most buyers would see in a teaser in a formal brokered process. And so that includes some of the history about the business, the rationale for selling. We collect some high-level financial metrics, and all of that information we use to build the company's profile on Rejigg. So it's pretty basic questions, at least for that initial profile. We don't go through any heavy vetting of financials or anything like that, at least up front. But and then obviously owners can review and edit their profiles after the fact. But the initial interview process is pretty straightforward. We're asking pretty basic questions that most buyers would ask on that initial call anyway.
Yeah. I guess maybe I'll add one thing. Sometimes people ask us if they need an asking price to be on the platform. And so this is a space where the high-level answer is no. So, Rejigg, we want to know if you are anchored to a price, and we want to know if, you have something in mind, just because that's helpful context to be transparent going into an initial call with a buyer. And we will help you if you have some questions about this. If you want to get to know what an appropriate purchase price might be, our team is happy to work with you on that. But most of the opportunities on our platform, I think it's slightly above 50%, but it's most, don't have an asking price. And so I think it's absolutely okay and an encouraged path to come on the platform and say, look, this is where my business is. I want to start having conversations and talk to 5 or 10 buyers over the next few months and understand what kinds of valuation criteria they're using and where I stand. And I think that as long as you are serious about selling your business, we're happy to have you on the platform, without an asking price. I think that that's part of our unique value proposition is for an owner to work with other platforms or to work with a broker. They want you to lock into a number and a purchase price before you talk to buyers and understand kind of the market. And so we've really set ourselves up to be a great way to start your selling journey. The kind of median seller on your platform, I think, comes to us with a mindset of it's been on my to-do list for 18 months to sell my company. I've met with a few brokers. I haven't liked them. I'm busy, obviously, running a small business, and I haven't had the chance to give something a try. I think that this is the right place for me to get started. And we're happy to play that role in the ecosystem and think that that serves our both buyers and sellers quite well. We try to keep the bar reasonably easy to enter our platform on the owner side.
And one thing I'll add to that, Alex mentioned before how once that initial conversation takes place, things can move pretty quickly. So one tactical thing that can help owners and sellers on our platform is starting to get some information organized, or at least knowing where that information is so that it can be organized quickly once those calls start taking place. And I think what that normally includes is at least 3 years of trailing financials, things like your customer list or key employees, having at least those sources of information either immediately ready to go or knowing who to ask at your company to get those things put together pretty quickly is just helpful to keep the ball rolling and keep momentum going after those first few calls take place.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. And are there any other tips that you have for sellers? Let's say they've found a buyer that they're connecting with, the buyer submits an LOI. What can the seller do to have the greatest likelihood of success in getting to closing and selling their business?
Well, first of all, you should get a good attorney.
You'd be surprised that some owners want to use their personal attorney that they've had a relationship with for years, and we have to tell them an M&A attorney is absolutely necessary and very different skill set.
Yes.
Can I reference the debate in the buy side community about proprietary versus broker? And obviously, I think there's like a similar conversation among sellers, right? Like, is it better to sell a business with or without a broker? And again, I don't think there's a right answer. It's kind of an unsolvable debate. But I think that the benefit of using a platform like ours is that, you can have a number of conversations over a period of time. Kind of, if you dedicate an hour a week to being an owner and taking calls on our platform, I think you'll have a lot of great conversations, and you'll learn a lot about what buyers are thinking about, and what market you'll form for yourself a view of what market is in terms of multiples, in terms of terms, and so forth. And so my advice is, kind of lean into that and take some calls. And if you're willing to put in a few hours a week, I think you really can meet a lot of interesting buyers and understand where the market is. There's an old expression that time kills deals, and I think that it is true. And Bobby alluded to this too. So working as hard as you can, and I know it's hard, right? Because again, these owners, small businesses, and the last thing you want to do is let your revenue start to slip or lose a key customer during a transaction period. That would be a terrible thing to happen. And on the other side of the table, you've got probably a very eager buyer who's working full time on this. And so I know that I don't sound tone deaf when I say this, but it is critical to move as quickly as possible to respond to diligence items, to keep people updated, to not let them think that you're not responding because you're not interested anymore, or for one reason or other, or you don't want to share financials because they're worse than you let on, right? Like, people start to fill in the blanks when when people are unresponsive. And so I think the biggest thing I'd say is, to whatever extent is reasonable, work hard to get back to things quickly. I think is the right thing to do once you're approaching and under LOI.
Well said. And I couldn't agree more in terms of the momentum. We really focus on, in our legal representation, build momentum, continue that momentum. When someone sends over a transaction document, I schedule a call for us to go over that transaction document. And then I say, okay, the party that I'm representing, do you have time? Let's figure out a time before that call for us to discuss it. Because when people know that as soon as you get a transaction document that you want to talk about it, even if you still have to work through what those specifics are, that really tremendously builds and maintains that momentum in the transaction. Over communication is a critical component of getting a deal done, because there are so many moving parts in so many different facets of the deal: your side, their side, both sides, getting to closing, lenders, investors. So communication is a critical component. Absolutely. And I think something really unique about your platform too is that in that debate between brokered, non-brokered, you really serve as a solution to make a non-brokered scenario so much less work on both parties. It's so much more efficient on the buy side. And then it's because you're aggregating the opportunities and you're enabling them to utilize a buy box to figure out which ones are going to fit their criteria. So you are bringing a tremendous amount of efficiency and cost savings tremendously to the buy side scenario as well as the sell side, because if they did this unbrokered and didn't have a platform, they wouldn't have a spot to be able to schedule meetings. It would all be via 20 different plus emails or sending out documents to multiple different parties and having to honestly redo the same work over and over again. It would be exhausting. So I think what's really unique and such a value add to your platform is that it really bridges the gap between non-brokered and brokered in creating an efficient and effective and successful scenario for both the buyers and sellers.
That's the goal. And I guess what I'll emphasize there is, we like to say that we put our money where our mouth is. We get paid almost exclusively on success fees. There's a small subscription fee to be a buyer, but most of our money is made on deals getting done. And so we believe that this works. We also, what I'll say is, like, our goal is to bring on good buyers and good sellers. And we don't make money per hour someone spends on the phone. We don't make, and so our goal really is, when you're a seller and you get an outreach from a buyer, that person wouldn't be on the platform unless we thought there was a chance that they would buy your business. And so hopefully we're creating an environment that all the incentives are in the right place to get deals done, and all the tools are surrounding the deal to make that as likely as possible. Because again, that's the only way that our business is gonna work.
Absolutely. And that's something that I've seen in all of the interactions that I've had with buyers and sellers on the platform as well.
Appreciate that.
Well, I think this has been a tremendous conversation. So much value for both buyers and sellers. Excited to share more about you guys, what it's been like working with you, more about your platform, and of course, how people can connect with you. All of the information is going to be in the show notes below. Anything else you want to share with the audience before we go?
Well, I just want to thank you for the opportunity here. This is a great platform and been a great conversation for us. We're learning and evolving every day, and would love to talk to anyone out there who has feedback or thoughts, and obviously hope to help many of the people listening get a deal done. That's the goal.
Yeah, I echo all of that. We've learned a lot from you on the legal side of things, and I think we could probably learn a lot from you on the content creation side of things too as well. So honored to be on the podcast.
Thank you. And you guys did phenomenal with the fireside chat that we had. I loved, if you get a chance to watch it, we'll link it in the show notes, but if you get a chance to watch it on YouTube, you can see the fireside chat graphics and everything, which I thought were so cool. And ironically, I'm in front of the fireplace now. And then, of course, you can see the fireside chat on Rejigg's YouTube, as well as on our podcast as well. So thank you guys so much for joining me. I really appreciate it. Cheers and happy deal making.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Take care.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of Dealmaking with Laura DiFrancesco. I hope you found today's discussion insightful and that it brought you one step closer to mastering the art of mergers and acquisitions. If you enjoyed this episode, please make sure to follow and subscribe to Dealmaking with Laura DiFrancesco on your favorite podcast platform so you never miss an episode. And if you found value in our discussion, please make sure to leave a 5-star review and share the podcast with anyone who may benefit from it. Sharing our podcast is the best way to show your support and help us to continue making more content just like this. So please be sure to take a screenshot and tag us on social media whenever you can. For more in-depth resources, be sure to visit our website at deanstreetlaw.com, where you can find articles, guides, and more information on our services. Or you can also visit lauradifrancesco.co/the-shop for more information on our legal courses. Don't forget to follow us and connect with us on social media for the latest updates, tips, and exclusive content. You can find us on LinkedIn, Search Funder, at LMDFrancesco on X, and at Dean Street Law on Instagram. Be sure to join us on our next episode where we'll be discussing more deal-making tips and insights. I'll see you there.